In January, something big happened in Egypt. I wonder if there's anyone here from Egypt. But we all know what happened. And it couldn't have happened, I think, without Facebook. This is the We Are All Khaled Said Facebook page. It was started by a young Egyptian who was angry that the police had beaten and tortured a man to death, who simply for going online at an internet cafe and distributing dissident material. So they created this Facebook page, and they said, basically, we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to take this kind of abuse from the police anymore. And after the Tunisian uprising led to the fall of Ben Ali, they said, we need our own version of this, and they asked people to go out onto the streets. The initial protests in Egypt were small. There were a handful of young people. And I would argue that those people couldn't have even taken that first step to go out into the streets if it weren't for social networking. What Facebook and other social media allowed them to do was find one another. First, they had to know, does anyone agree with me, right? It's a very, very scary thing to stand up against a dictatorial regime that might arrest or torture or even kill you. So before you go out into the streets, you want to make sure that you're not alone. Facebook allowed them to find lots of other people who agreed with them, and it gave them the collective confidence they needed to take those first steps out onto the streets. And of course, that led to this. Hundreds of thousands of more people flooding into Tahrir Square. And those people wouldn't have gone out into Tahrir Square had it not been for those initial brave few people who went out first. We saw the same thing happening in Europe. Of course, we saw some violent demonstrations in Greece and the UK, but we also saw a massive peaceful demonstration in Spain. This is the most significant political event in Spain since the death of Francisco Franco. Then we saw it happening in Israel. The largest protest in the history of Israel took place this summer. 500,000 people took part in this protest. And Israel's population is only, I think, 7 million. So that is a huge percentage of the population was involved in a protest movement. And of course, now we're seeing Occupy Wall Street and the global Occupy movement that has sprung up in response to what a generation feels is an unfettered power of the banks and our political leadership, which has allowed the financial system to put an entire generation in economic distress. I live in New York, and I was actually reporting for a newspaper, for a magazine from Zuccotti Park, which is where the initial protest started yesterday. The police swept the camp and removed all of the tents. But today, as I speak, one of the largest protests of the entire Occupy movement is happening right now. So these are world-changing events. And they all have one thing in common. They have two things in common. They were started by young people, and they were started by young people who used social media to get the message out and to spread these movements. Just a couple stats on social media. Facebook has 800 million people on it. By next year, it'll be 1 billion people. Twitter's got 200 million. LinkedIn has 115 million people. This is a huge percentage of the global population is spending a huge percentage of their lives on these social networks. So you do have to take them seriously. You do have to go to them. And why is this important? It's important because these technologies, this social media, empowers ordinary people. That's what all of these protests are showing all around the world. You don't have to be, the boss. You don't have to be a political leader. You don't have to be a member of the elite. You can be an ordinary person with an internet connection, and you can literally change the world.